Now we have Dr. Amit Goswamy, who will be addressing all of us. A quick word on Dr. Amit Goswamy. He is a theoretical quantum physicist, revolutionary amongst growing body of renegade scientists who in the recent years has ventured into the domain of spirituality in an attempt to interpret the seemingly inexplicable findings of curious experiments and to validate intuitions about the existence of spiritual dimension of life. A prolific writer, that is what he is, a teacher and a visionary. He's appeared in the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? I'm sure most of us must have seen it. It's available in the net. And Dalai Lama Renaissance, as well as the award-winning documentary, The Quantum Activist. Yes, and this is Dr. Amit Goswamy to you. Thank you.
Thank you all. I really appreciate the organizers for inviting me. It's a pleasure to present this particular subject, science of the heart, in India. Because in India, people have always known that the heart is very important for consciousness research. If you want to find out who you are, then people have always claimed that the journey is a journey towards the heart. Bit strange, coming from Western science background that we all suffer from today. And I'm only being facetious. Western science has given us much good stuff too. And by Western science, I mean the science that West has been preaching today. Materialist science. It was not always like this, of course. This particular materialist science, based on the idea that matter gives us everything, has a direct conflict with the topic of this conference. Although it's not always so clear. Quantum energy, it could be interpreted as little bits of energy, and indeed, material bits of quantum energy are exactly like that. Little bits of energy that cannot be broken down. And yet, when we talk about energy, just as the two previous speakers were doing, and especially the speaker who showed us pictures of aura, when they talk about energy, they are not talking about energy in the same sense as a materialist scientist does. This energy that we are talking about in this conference is not about material energy, physical energy. Nothing physical moves when a person's aura is affected or not. It's not about the movement of anything physical. What is it about? Well, we heard a little bit about Chinese medicine. In Chinese medicine, they say it's the movement of qi or qi. What is qi? Well, it's non-physical. This much the Chinese figured out. In India, where the chakras were discovered a long time ago, they call this energy prana. And that's a little bit more clear because the word prana means also life. So energy connected with life. Something that non-living objects do not have. In other words, matter without life does not have this energy, prana, or chi, whatever you want to call it. In the West, we are now calling it vital energy, energy connected with life. We accept the fact, when we say that somehow, when life is represented in non-life, in living things, then something special happens. This special energy comes about. And health is dependent on the existence and especially wellness in terms of this particular non-physical energy. But a few words of explanation needs to be given, and I have a whole hour and a half to talk to you about this. So can something more be said? Yes, something more can be said, and this is where the word quantum comes in terms of discussion of this life energy. Quantum physics is giving us a theoretical background, a theoretical context to speak about this in a scientific way. If you, as many of you are, if you are an adherent of scientific materialism, the idea that matter is everything, matter gives all that is known to us, all that is experienced by us, all that is responsible for our well-being, then of course you are stuck with the material view of what our body is about. And then you get only two factors. One is the genes, yes, genes, those things that has instructions for making proteins in our body, and proteins are of course important for our functioning, so genes. And the other thing that the materialist scientist draws our attention to is the brain. So according to materialist biology, for our well-being, all that is important is genes and the brain. This does not get you very far. How to show that? Well, look at the experiences that we have. We, of course, have the experience of thought. Materialist science would say, well, brain is sort of a computer, and thoughts are computable, and therefore, what's so surprising? So brain thinks. Just like a computer can think, and we'll prove it to you. And they will show you a computer, and you can converse with it, giving you the appearance that when you talk, you are doing exactly what the computer does, namely it has a program which allows you to pick up the cue and you answer to another program's cues. That's what's going on with you, and that's what's going on with the other person. But of course you object. But internally I feel all this thinking that goes on. What's that about? And the scientist says, well, that's just noise. Don't worry about it. That's not meaningful. So that's one view we can take. But even if this sounds pretty good as an explanation, even then you will think of something else. You will think, well, but I have this distinct feeling that I think. Who is this I? Tell me. And now the materialist scientist is a little bit stuck. Because if the brain is everything, then where does the I come from? Brain is an object. So science says, modern science says, the objects can be broken down into littler objects. So brain can be broken down into neurons, brain cells. Brain cells can be broken down into molecules. Molecules can be broken down into atoms. Atoms can be broken down into what is called elementary particles, quarks and electrons. That's it. But all of this is object. Do you see the problem now? Objects will never make a subject. So immediately we see that if you want to talk about consciousness, if you want to talk about the quality of consciousness that brings us this I into the picture, then the materialist science is not going to go very far. And once we know that materialist science is incomplete, materialist science description of the brain is not giving us the picture of the I somehow must be coming from something else. And what else can it come from if it's not physical, something non-physical, right? And brain is representing it. So this is the basic idea on which you have to liberate yourself from scientific materialism. The idea is that matter gives consciousness, matter gives us life energy. That's one idea. That's where materialists are stuck. And you liberate yourself by saying that no, this just does not work, because this way of looking at things cannot explain the I. Is the I meaningful? So materialists attack the meaningfulness of the I, causal efficacy of the I. Materialists say, well, but the I is useless. I has no role to play. Oh yes, I has no role to play. But then, how does healing take place at all? Healing is a change towards positive from negative. Healing is a negative experience. In physics, we have a summary of negative things that happen in nature. It's called entropy. All things go towards increasing entropy, left to themselves. So disease to healing is a movement opposite to that direction of entropy. And then it dawns on you that it couldn't possibly be that I does not have any role to play at all in healing. In fact, many open-minded physicians would say that yes, the mental state of happiness of the person, state of consciousness of the person plays a huge role in healing. So in this way, we liberate ourselves from the materialist idea by saying that no, there is something else, and brain is representing it. This idea should not be too foreign to you. Why? Because, after all, how do we think? One way is that we have programs. The other way is to ask, but who writing the program? Who is writing the program? Computers, we are very familiar with. What we call computer programs is written by a programmer, a conscious person. And not only that, what do we do in a software? We write our mental meaning and represent it in the computer hardware. That representation is what we call software. So you can also think of the mind that way, that it is a representation, it is something that is being represented in the brain. Mind is beyond the brain. Consciousness is beyond the brain. It's being represented in the brain as the self, I, and similarly mental objects are being represented in the brain as software of the brain. So if we think in this way, then what about the body? Body is still left out. What about the body? Now, for the body, biologists have this concept of the genes. And they say everything is determined, as far as the body is concerned, by the genes. Is this view correct? Now, there again, we find something new has come about in the experimental arena, a subject called epigenetics. Epigenetics, outside of the genes. The genes are run by programs, and these programs are not part of the makeup of the genes. Many people have contributed. What is the source of these genetic programs? Rupert Sheldrake's name comes to me, and he first gave us the idea that this epigenetic source of genetic programs, he called them morphogenetic field. Morphogenetic field. Morpho means form, genesis, of course, is creation. Fields that help to create form. Sheldrake leaves out Helfum. But now we'll get into a little bit projection from quantum physics. Quantum physics will make it very clear who is taking help of the morphogenetic fields to create biological form? Consciousness. So can we build a science where consciousness plays such a primary role, causal role in the world, which agrees with our experience? Indeed, our experience is, as this conference speakers will adequately show today and tomorrow and the day after. We know that consciousness has causal power. Can we make a theory of consciousness having causal power and more? We, of course, are sitting in a country called India where there is a tremendous tradition called Vedanta, which squarely declares, and this is, mind you, thousands of years ago. This is amazing, more amazing than even what the Greeks did. I mean, they discovered similar things, but that was only 2,500 years ago. And these characters probably existed in this very land, in this very village maybe, 5,000, 7,000, who knows, long ago. And these characters, I hope you don't mind me calling them characters, but believe me, they were. They all had long beard like Swamiji over there. And they looked like characters, wild people, but they were seers. And they declared consciousness is the ground of being. It's everything there is. The world comes from that. Very opposite to the view that we have today. The world is made of atoms, elementary particles. That's what the materialist scientist says. In that picture, there's only the brain, but you will never have an explanation of what gives you this experience of the I. Were the ancient people in India able to explain everything? No. You have to give credit to materialist scientists too. They got stuck from the other end. They posited beautifully that consciousness is the ground of being, but then when it came to explain the mundane, the world, they couldn't. The science was just not there. The apparatuses that requires to study matter were just not there. So they did a very nasty thing, in a way of speaking. They declared the world is illusion. It doesn't matter. Just as today, the materialist